Maureen's a theist, she, her, and wants to ask about they, them. So welcome, Maureen. You're on with Arden Hart.
Hell yeah.
Hello. Hello, guys.
Hey.
First, let me say that I'm kind of in the middle of theist to atheist. Since I've been listening to you guys, you're kind of helping me along the way. I have a question about the them. I don't understand it. I don't understand how somebody can be a plural, I guess. That's how I see it. I don't know.
It's not a plural.
Means.
Yeah. So
no, it's not?
they, them has been used in the singular since like way back in I think it was the late 1300s, but it may have been 1400s. It was in Shakespeare. Yeah. The singular they, them has been a thing for a really long time.
Okay. So who usually refers to themselves as a they? Is it a trans person usually uses the they, them?
Mostly we can get into that. I just want to point out, Maureen, I love the sentence you just gave because you were like, you just did. So who is it that usually refers to themselves as the they, them? Are they like, you just did it. You just use the non-binary singular they, them in your sentence without even meaning to. But yeah. So non-binary people usually consider themselves trans, but not always. Non-binary people in some cases can be like a person who's assigned female at birth. So like they have always been a girl their whole life and they don't really want to transition, but they don't really identify with womanhood. And so often those people will consider themselves non-binary, but not trans because, maybe they feel like it's some sort of stolen valor on trans people. I don't think so. But that is what I've heard from a lot of people who would consider themselves non-binary and not trans. That said, I tend to describe trans people as anyone whose gender identity is different from the one that they were assigned at birth. So if somebody is non-binary, to me, that makes them trans. And non-binary people often use they, them, but not always. It really is kind of whatever you want to call yourself. I mean, there's no prescriptive rules to how you have to refer to yourself, right? So it's kind of, I think for people, if this helps, one of my old roommates was non-binary and the way they described it to me, and this was kind of the way that really got me understanding non-binary people a lot better, was like when I was growing up, it wasn't so much that I knew right away that I was a girl. It was that I knew that I wasn't a boy. I had this huge aversion to being a boy. Whenever I was put in the boys' groups or asked to do boyish things, it just felt wrong to me. And this person was assigned female at birth, and they felt that way about being a girl. But then as they transitioned and people were seeing them as a man, they immediately realized, wow, that feels just as wrong. I feel much better when I can just be myself and not have to aspire to anyone's ideals about what it means to be a man or a woman. And so that's not every non-binary person's experience, but I think that is a really easy to grasp way of conceiving of the non-binary person, like somebody who just, whenever they tried to fit into either box, it was just felt really wrong for them. And so they would rather just kind of depart from that whole thing entirely and just be like, I'm just me. I think they, them is what people use. Not necessarily always because it's what people really feel is right for them, although it does in many cases. I think it's more like it is the most accessible, gender neutral pronoun in the English language.
One of my favorite examples ever actually came from Arden, and I may add to it or modify it a little bit, but it came from there. And that is, let's say you're a school teacher and the bell rings and everybody runs out of class. And there's a backpack sitting there. I would pick up that backpack and go, look, someone left their backpack. I hope they are still around so I can find them and give this to them. And I do all that because I am unsure about whether I'm talking about someone who uses he pronouns or she pronouns, he, him, he, she, her. And so that's a prime, easy example, which you also did just when talking, of here's a singular they, them. And there are people, by the way, who you know, we have neo pronouns. They've made up new pronouns like Zers, you know, there's a whole bunch of them, and people can do whatever. And it's an attempt to say, I don't feel like he, I don't feel like she. And so I'd rather go for the uncertain one, the nondescript one, whether or not your concept of non-binary or my concept of non-binary matches what's in their head. The reality is they do not identify as a man or a woman. They can switch at different times or whatever, or maybe they do on some days, or maybe they feel more one way than they do the other. But at the end of the day, just out of respect for not wanting to put them in the wrong bucket, we have the general kind of ungendered bucket that we use whenever we don't know.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I see where I was making my mistake. Yeah. They isn't a plural. The term non-binary, is that you're saying is that it's a person who hasn't chosen or can't, I don't know, want to say it wrong, but can't decide whether they're a he or a she? Is that a non-binary?
No, I wouldn't describe it that way. Yeah, I don't know if I would quite describe it that way, but don't worry about, Maureen, if you're coming here honestly just wanting information and you're not coming here with like a conclusion to be cruel, you don't have to worry about saying the wrong thing. I want to help you get that information. And you seem like a very honest person. I've heard your past calls. I think I've produced almost all the times you've called in. So I've heard you quite a few times. Yeah. So it's really like, did that thing I was talking about earlier of like not identifying with man or woman, that makes sense to you? Like,
I think it would be, it's hard for me to think of someone being, I don't know, so, I don't want to say mixed up, but so unsure that they can't, pick one or the other. I mean, that must be scary in a way.
Yeah, I don't know if it's mixed up or like they can't pick. I think rather it's like they know who they are and they feel comfortable with who they are internally. But it's that when they go out into society and somebody says, like, for example, my friend who was, assigned female at birth and they transitioned, like when they were looking for shaving stuff in the aisle, right? Like a man who was also there looking would talk to them and be like, well, you look too young to be looking for shaving stuff. And they would feel like that made them feel gross because, they're not trying to fit this guy's ideal of masculinity, but because he thinks they're a man, he thinks that they're a young, effeminate looking man. And that makes him feel gross. But he also knew that being a woman was not right for him. Like he had dysphoria about his body. And so their body, wow, I just misgendered them right here. See how easy that is. But like, yeah, so I think it's not so much that it's like being confused or mixed up. It's more that whenever people try to put them in a box, it feels wrong. And I think they would just rather be like, I am just me. I am not the boxes you're trying to put on me. And so I would rather you just call me they, them. I want to be outside of the boxes that you're trying to put me into. Does that make sense?
When you hear people...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, when you hear people talk about all of a sudden there's 23 genders, there are some people who may not know whether they would prefer to be in the man bucket or the woman bucket. There are other people who know they don't want to be in either. And one of the other great examples about talking about transness, for lack of a better term, is handedness. There are some people who are right-handed. There are some people who are left-handed. There are some people who are ambidextrous. And you don't necessarily know whether somebody's right-handed, left-handed, or ambidextrous, and you may not have any way to tell because it's not just which hand are they writing with or which hand do they catch a ball with, because some people might write with one hand and catch with another one. Some people might have a dominant right eye, and that tends to make their right arm more dominant, but they may be left-handed. If I am right-handed and right eye dominant, if my right arm gets lopped off, I don't become left-handed. I'm still right-handed as my dominant hand because that's the way my brain works, but I will have to learn to live life left-handed. And there are people who have been denied care who are being essentially forced to live their life wrong-handed because society won't allow them to live their life correct-handed. And then there are people like Lux. I apologize if I'm misspeaking on behalf of Lux or anybody else, but there are people like Luxander, who's on Transatlantic Colin Show, who might view themselves as ambidextrous, or I'm not handed at all. Like, I don't have a dominant hand. I'm bad with both hands. Who knows?
I'd rather use my feet.
Sorry, Lux, that wasn't you.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was in school, left-handed, and I'm left-handed, they used to try to make you right-handed. I mean, that was a thing.
Yep. Honestly, that is a great analogy for the like social isolation that I think trans people feel when somebody tries to make you a man or make you a woman. It's like trying to make you right-handed when you're left-handed. It's like, sure, I can kind of learn how to be a man. I can learn how to play along. But like fundamentally, I always know deep down that being a woman is where I fit. Like that is what applies to me the best. And yeah. Also, Maureen, I have a question. Are you available at 2 p.m. Central Time tomorrow?
At 2 p.m.?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, tomorrow, myself and my co-host that Matt was just mentioning, Luxander, who is non-binary, will be hosting the Transatlantic Call-In Show. So if you wanted to call in and talk to a non-binary person yourself, you could call us there. We would love to talk to you.
Yeah, they may have better answers than either of us.
Yeah. You know what? I like listening to you guys. You guys explain things nicely. I can understand. And I think I've had always an understanding that non-binary or trans exists because I think there's a little bit of, if you want to call it male and female in all of us. I mean, I sometimes feel one way and other times I'm just the girly girl. You know what I mean?
I totally agree.
Identify. Yeah, I think that's in everybody. And I think anybody who denies that is just being ridiculous. So I think it's
one of the things that I find. Sorry, go ahead, Maureen.
Go on. No, go on.
I think one of the things that I find most frustrating is it seems so difficult for people to grasp transgender, and yet they grasp ambidexterity, they grasp bisexual and pansexual. There are so many categories where we typically have a binary or we have a normative binary, and yet there are exceptions. And in those cases where there are exceptions, it's like, hey, I'm straight. Hey, I'm gay. Well, I'm pan and I'm bi. Hey, I'm a man. Hey, I'm a woman. Hey, I'm non-binary. Hey, I'm not sure what the fuck I am. I don't care about your categories. I'd just like to live my life and wear what I want to wear and be left alone. And some people are more opposed to it than others. And at the core of most transphobia and at the core of why they focus on trans women is disguised homophobia, which is why they come at me and they're like, you're gay, homie, as if it would bother me to be gay. It's just weird.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of the transphobia just comes mostly from religious people because of their religious beliefs, or do you think that other people who aren't religious might have some phobia?
I think originally probably the initiation of the cultural pushback on trans people came from religion and from religious sort of rebuke. But I think more broadly now, it has kind of become this internet pseudo-intellectual, like, how would you say it, like counterculture kind of position to take, where it's like, oh, they like to frame society as being so woke now, and they just want trans people everywhere, that now it's like the edgy position to be counterculture and to be against trans people. But it's ironic because trans people are still marginalized. We're still, denied, we're still homeless more often than our cisgender peers from getting like kicked out of our homes as teenagers. And we're still, have a harder time keeping a job and all of these things. Like society is not woke and accepting of us at all, but that is the framing. So yeah, I think there's sort of an internet debate, pseudo-intellectual counterculture thing that is informing a lot of it right now. And that's kind of what I would frame like Elon Musk and Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris in kind of that bucket where I think they feel like it's a countercultural thing that they have to push back on because it's going too far when it's in fact not even really starting for trans people. You know, I mean, like we've made progress for sure. You know, I mean, the fact that I was able to transition at 22 is already so much better than so many of the people in the generation ahead of me, you know, who probably waited until their 50s and 60s to start transitioning. But yeah, it's
you can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's really hard. But
to kind of answer Maureen's question, I would have just reactively said that, yeah, most of this comes from religion, except that there's a significant portion of the secular atheist community, including Dawkins, Harris, others, who are engaged in transphobia to varying degrees and support of gender critical stuff and everything else. So I'm no longer comfortable just saying, yep, it's primarily religious. What I would say is that the flawed thinking and the fear and bigotry that drive that for the religious clearly exist and drive that for the non-religious as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think society always has to have a boogeyman, and I think right now it's the trans people that are, are the target of the fear.
I think you
and
may be correct.
Yeah, the person who I started the Transatlantic Call-In show, the Thursday show on this network with, her name is Katie. She always called it the trans panic, and I think that is such an accurate way to describe it. It's kind of like the satanic panic from back in the day. It's this this cultural like miasma, you know, people are buying into so many layers of lies and misinformation about trans people that it's caused this like mass like delusion, for lack of a better word, about what trans people are and what we're asking for from society. And they would rather stoke fears about, you know, how trans women are going to assault you in the bathroom and take your daughter's soccer trophy. And it's sad because, you know, trans people should be allowed to win a soccer game in the 5th grade, and trans people should be allowed to pee at the airport, you know, when they're in between a state that lets them pee in the bathroom and a state that doesn't. Like, these things shouldn't be a problem, but because of lies and misinformation, they are. And that's kind of why I think calling it the trans panic is a really good linguistic like tool.
That's a good description. That's a good description. Yeah. Well, thanks guys for, I don't understand why people have to constantly belittle somebody else. I think it's mostly to do with fear, or just wanting to have somebody that they can push around, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks guys.
Thank you, Maureen.
I appreciate you taking my call because like I said, I'm an older person and this is really new to me. I don't really know any trans. I do have somebody in my family that I have referred to themselves as a they, and I've never brought it up to her and asked her about it. And
to them.
Oh yeah. What? Excuse me.
No, that's okay. I mean, you're learning, so this is a good opportunity. I would even maybe like show them that you called in and asked about this. I think that would be a really good faith way for them to understand that, like, maybe you don't understand things, but you want to, and you want to, you know, do better for them. And I think as a trans person, knowing that somebody would go so far as to call a call-in show to know how to better talk to me would make me trust them a lot in their sincerity.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll do that. I think I'll do that. That's a way to bring it up and be able to talk to her about it, I guess. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate my call.
Thank you, Maureen. You have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you needed to do it. That's the whole point. I only had her move along, so we didn't keep repeating that little loop at the end there, but Maureen's really sweet. Maureen calls. She's called a couple times lately, and she's doing a lot of deconstruction. I don't need her to be an atheist, but I like that she's evaluating her beliefs, and yeah.
I won't be mad if it happens.
And like a subscriber, Jimmy will have to go on a polyamorous dating show to win some prize money.
Wait, I want to do that. So also hit like and subscribe, and then go to patreon.com/calltheline. I was trying to make you laugh and ruin the take. That's why that silly face earlier. If I was on a polyamorous dating show, I would just choose everybody. Except Frederick. Leave a comment.